On the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz comes an unprecedented exhibition about one of history's darkest moments. Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, features more than 500 original objects, first-hand accounts, and survivor testimonies that tell the powerful story of the Auschwitz concentration camp, its history and legacy, and the underlying conditions that allowed the Holocaust to happen. On now exclusively at ROM. Tickets at rom.ca.
I think the broader target is the university system and the notion of a quote-unquote liberal elite and a, what people call the professional managerial class. And the Republican Party has been very successful demonizing the Democrats with this label.
Hi, I'm Phoebe Maltz Bovy, and you're listening to The Jewish Angle, a podcast from the Canadian Jewish News. My guest today is David Weinfeld. David is an assistant professor of world religions at Rowan University in New Jersey. His first book, published by Cornell University Press, is An American Friendship, Horace Callan, Alain Locke, and the Development of Cultural Pluralism. He was also a doctoral student at New York University in history when I was doing my own doctorate there in French and French studies. But he is here today more directly related to two earlier parts of his biography, coming from Canada, Montreal to be specific, and having gone to college somewhere near Boston. Is that correct?
Yes, just outside of Boston, but on the T.
Okay. Well, welcome to The Jewish Angle.
Thank you.
I never say, is it the Jewish angle or the Jewish angle? Well, have to figure that out. So when were you at Harvard, which is the only important thing about you for today's purposes?
True.
And what was Jewish life like there, or life generally like there?
Great. Thank you, first of all, for having me on the show. Very excited. I was at Harvard from 2001 to 2005. And my first day of classes was September 12th, 2001. So it was an interesting time, certainly, to be in college. And I think, the world kind of turned upside down, but it was exciting. Certainly to be at a place like Harvard at that time where people felt, I guess, like they were in a prime position to try to understand what was going on and feeling like they could make a difference. Whether that's accurate or not is a different question, but certainly people felt that way, I think. And Jewishly, I think it was a wonderful time to be at Harvard. I mean, I went to Harvard Hillel almost every Friday night. I really enjoyed that experience. I had other interesting experiences as well. This was during the Second Intifada, of course, and I was involved in an Arab-Jewish dialogue group there, which I'm sure we can talk about. So, I think it sounds like things have changed since I was there. I can't comment on that more precisely because I haven't been there in a long time, though I'm going to my 20th reunion this weekend. So,
Yep. Okay, so we're recording on June 4th, in case you may have already been to this reunion by that.
Oh, yes, I will.
It's not live. We're not live.
No, you're right. Yes, of course.
It's okay. So those are actually the same years that I went to college, but I went to the University of Chicago, so I don't have to be euphemistic. It's somewhere in Chicago. But I definitely had a different experience Jewishness-wise in those exact years. I also, I was supposed to be literally traveling, and then it was 9/11, and I was in Manhattan because that's where I'm from. I was, as not at the towers, but not the best of days. But what I was going to say about the college experience was I had grown up around a lot of Jews in New York and then was suddenly at school with a lot of people who hadn't met Jews before. And I experienced both kind of proto versions of the you're part of the problem with the Iraq war because you're Jewish kind of the neocons, the Straussians, all of that stuff I remember, but also just this like basic fact of people who just had not met many Jews before and had a lot of notions of what Jews would be like. Like I had a roommate who assumed that Jews were just all extremely studious and could not figure out why I was like chatting with my friends on Instant Messenger and not, always with a book. Anyway, but it was a different time. But so I read this Steven Pinker long read about Harvard in the New York Times, and the word Harvard appears in it. How many times would you guess? It's a long article.
35.
59.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I made sure to like not include it in the headline and stuff. I did a count. And a part of me saw this and was like, oh my goodness, people are too excited about Harvard affiliations.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's something actually to this now, which is this Trump stuff with Harvard. The Trump administration in the U.S. is focusing its crackdown on Harvard. And my question for you is why do you think that? So what specifically he's doing? He's trying to block international students from going to Harvard. He's trying to block funding going to Harvard, like federal funding from going to Harvard. Why do you think, and other things too, but why do you think he's focusing the crackdown on Harvard as versus, and I should try to get in at least 59 times the word Harvard, but rather than Columbia, right? Because also an Ivy League school and the one that's more famously involved in the encampments and so forth.
That's a good question, and I don't know exactly why, but and he did obviously target Columbia to an extent, and University of Pennsylvania and other places to an extent. I think that Harvard does have a kind of symbolic resonance that these places don't have. One can discuss ad nauseum which school is actually better in which way, and there are magazines that rank them, and they have a lot of fun with that, and certainly the students when they're there have fun with that too, but I don't think that's necessarily relevant to the point that Harvard is the oldest university, it's the wealthiest university, it's the university that most people outside of the United States have heard of. And so if Trump can bend Harvard to his will, I think that carries a lot of weight. And I think they probably correctly note that there are a lot of Harvard students and alumni who find themselves in opposition to Trump's policies. And while that's not different than these other places, I mean, it's probably that if they're the big kahuna and they could take down Harvard, then the other ones will fold as well. That might be part of the strategy.
Let's say you're a Canadian Jew without any Harvard affiliation at all. And I speak as one. I have nothing to do with Harvard. I've never even applied to it. So why does it matter? What are the stakes here? To quote to paraphrase from one of my grad school professors who, whenever you tried to hand in a term paper, he would say, "What are the stakes?" And I'd be like, I don't know, papers do. But why does it matter if Trump dismantles Harvard?
I don't think that it matters in with any sort of specificity to Harvard. I think it matters that he is trying to dismantle the university system, the higher ed system as we know it, and Harvard is a symbol of that. So, if he was doing something similar to Yale or Princeton or Columbia, it would be just as bad, but it just might not resonate as much. But so I don't think it's a Harvard specific thing at all. I think Harvard is a symbol for what he's trying to do to higher ed. And also, right, this is not new, right? I mean, J.D. Vance has said that the professors are the enemy, the university is the enemy. It's not
Yale
new.
Law School grad, right? J.D. Vance?
Correct. Yeah, Yale Law School graduate has said that, right? And so, we can discuss, there's a long tradition of some sense of anti-intellectualism in the United States that many people have written about, and some have debate how powerful is it? Is it not that powerful? People often actually compare it to France, which supposedly venerates intellectuals, something you might
Yeah, and
be
it does. It
speak
does. I
about,
mean,
you
yeah,
know.
what I've
So,
wondered with the conservative thing, though, is I used to kind of follow this a lot, the conservative critiques of higher ed, like that would be in National Review Online, like in the early 2000s and things like that. But then it always seemed to be that they wanted ideological diversity, right? And my impression was that they wanted either great books or more conservatives on campus, or they had these different agendas, but it never seemed to, the goal never seemed to be what it seems to be now. So I've been asking every guest who comes on these topics versions of this question, but like basically what is Trump actually trying to do here? Because it seems like there's a lot of consensus that he's not actually trying to fight anti-Semitism, that's just this kind of pretext he's giving. And I will talk about, though, the
sure.
existence of actual anti-Semitism too. But I guess, so first, I want to know what you think, and then I'm going to give my latest theory. Each episode, I probably have a different one. But
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what he's trying to do, but I would say that, again, I think the broader target is the university system and the sort of notion of a quote unquote liberal elite and a what people call the professional
Mm-hmm.
managerial class, right? That does dominate the Democratic Party, and the Republican Party has been very successful in demonizing the Democrats with this label that is associated with higher ed, and specifically with elite institutions in higher ed. So I think that's the goal, right? The goal is to make higher ed less less powerful and less important
Mm-hmm.
to America, right? There still is the sense, and I mean, when I speak to other faculty or other alumni of elite institutions in the United States, and you know this well, that going to college, even though not everyone does it, is still the sort of cultural rite of passage in the United States. Right? People often said in Israel it's serving in the military. In the United States, it's going away to college, having the college campus experience. Even though, as we both know, and I've come to learn, especially teaching at Virginia Commonwealth University and now at Rowan University, that it is, of course, not the majority of Americans, even that are college bound, that have that kind of experience. But in the cultural mind and among the leadership class in the United States, it is much more common. And I think part of the effort is to just undo that, to weaken that and to undo that, and to try to offer dignity. I think that would be the positive spin to people who don't take that route, and to show that they're not even just as good, but in fact better than people who do take that route. Those are the stakes as I see them, right? That it's this dismantling of higher ed, which is a cultural touchstone in the United States, and is also, and this is true even to this day, is the envy of the world, right? People send, foreign students are desperate to go
You
to.
were the foreign
There I
student.
was. I don't know how desperate I should have been, but there are many fine Canadian
I was going to
universities.
say, like, the
But
tragedy that is McGill.
yeah, no, I can talk about this at great length, but the truth is there are international students coming from all over the place, and
No,
they
it's
do
true.
so,
It's true. My husband was one of them, right? Like,
yeah,
yeah,
in STEM, but
yeah,
also not
yeah,
in STEM.
yeah.
And the fact that he's targeting international students also is really fascinating, because it's at the very least, like, it's about control. I think higher ed is going to be what this Trump regime wants it to be. It wants it to be weaker, less important for U.S. citizens, and probably steering people in certain directions ideologically and professionally.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think those are the stakes.
I think you're right. And I think all I have to offer is a yes and, basically, because I think all of that makes sense. And I do just keep returning to this idea that I used to think that conservatives just wanted a more conservative higher ed. And I think this is different, sort of like categorically different what's happening now. And I think it really is about encouraging brain drain. That's like sort of feature, not bug, and getting this kind of revenge, like you say, on the people who like sort of the people who think they're so smart. And you see this as like a pattern, right? So there's Elon Musk getting rid of the blue checks on Twitter so that it's not elite journalists, but it's instead people who are paying for an Elon Musk branded product, whatever. I'm not going to go into the whole Twitter thing, but and Jeff Bezos is taking over the making the Washington Post opinion. This is news as of June 4th, making the Washington Post opinion pages sort of a bit of a watered down situation, like first taking over the ideology of it, but then saying like, no, it's going to be like, we're going to use like ordinary people
AI.
using AI, submit op-eds. And this, as an opinion editor, I have a lot of thoughts that I could digress on and won't, but I think there is like, you start to see a pattern that it's like, you think you're so smart, well, we'll get you. But then I think that if you combine this, though, if you zoom out even more and you combine it with the tariffs, you're looking at like, this is about turning America into a manufacturing economy rather than a knowledge one. And also then there's the whole gender aspect of it. And like, I think there's this real, like, I don't think you can ignore that college has become at least understood to be. I think the reality is a little more complicated, like this female dominated thing. It's an arena where women are doing really well. And how do you, like he's going to offer women, no trans girls on the volleyball team in exchange for shutting down college, as if women had asked for this thing about the volleyball team to begin with. But the point is that's kind of what I see is going on, that I think it is really like, it's not just screw over the university to screw over the university, but that it is like remake America in this kind of profound way where there's like a woman at home rather than with one of those email jobs, because that's become this whole thing, right? The email jobs. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with that. And we, again, I think the only place where I might disagree is that I don't know if it's a sea change. I don't think this is entirely new. I do think this is part of a longer process that has been going on. When you were talking about gender, I mean, this is something that's well known, right? That when a profession becomes feminized, it becomes devalued, right? That was true with teaching. That's true with nursing. That's true with therapy and psychology that as a discipline. And I think you're right that the goal is to make that happen to higher ed as well.
Well, I think the goal is to make it happen more than it's happened just sort of free market style, right? Like it's to make it's sort of treating the fact that it's treating any time people who are not, I guess, white men, whatever, are doing well as if that's something that the government artificially put into place, and that if you take out whatever they're calling DEI, kind of everything could be DEI, if you take that away, then it's going to be this meritocracy. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not so persuaded that that's actually what's happening. But yeah, I wanted to ask, though, also, since you are a professor in the States, how much, if at all, has all of this stuff that one reads about, Trump's, intervening in higher ed, affected your own work or your own university?
Great series of questions. I mean, it certainly affects the faculty a lot because the faculty are thinking and talking about this a lot. It's hard to gauge with the students. A lot of students seem, at least where I go to school, disengaged. They're disengaged from their schoolwork and they're disengaged from the political scene. I had a number of students tell me they didn't vote in November. I don't see Rowan in particular, where I teach, is a more STEM-oriented institution, and it's also a more commuter institution. So it's not the kind of place that necessarily has a lot of student activism. I would say, in fact, the opposite. It does not have a lot of student activism. Um, and so that kind of lends itself already to this just disengagement, and then so not sort of recognizing the stakes that you and I have been talking about. And I don't want to overgeneralize. There are definitely students that do and are very troubled by this. But I think that a lot of students are like, I need to learn what I need to learn from college. In many ways, I need to just get my piece of paper, my degree, and because I know that that's going to get me a better job, or at least that's the transactional agreement, right? That you're supposedly putting in. Whether there is a job at the end of the tunnel or not, unclear. But so I definitely think, and I think all those things are really connected, right? When you devalue humanities and social sciences, especially, and you try to control the curriculum and limit what people are allowed to teach and say, in the classroom and out of the classroom, the students kind of can understand what really matters to university administrators when that happens. And, it's clear at a place like Rowan and other places that the kinds of things that I do, history and religion, and the kind of things that you have done are not valued.
On the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz comes an unprecedented exhibition about one of history's darkest moments. Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, features more than 500 original objects, first-hand accounts, and survivor testimonies that tell the powerful story of the Auschwitz concentration camp, its history and legacy, and the underlying conditions that allowed the Holocaust to happen. On now exclusively at ROM. Tickets at rom.ca.
There has been kind of a line that I mostly have agreed with about how the truly dangerous anti-Semitism in the United States comes from the right. Not that there isn't any on the left, but the really dangerous stuff is from the right, like from, the alt-right, once called alt-right, I don't know if it still is, trolling that's now MAGA politics, from Elon Musk lifting his arm in the manner he did, and from incidents of far-right anti-Semitic violence sprinkled throughout American history, including recently. But now with attacks in Boulder and D.C., we're seeing anti-Jewish violence in the United States in a manner that had existed for a while, for decades, really, in Europe, where Jews are a stand-in for Israel, right? So I'm thinking about it a lot, obviously, and it leads to an atmosphere not just of Jews being, many Jews, obviously not all, being afraid, but also what I find is that there's this sense that whenever Jews are attacked, this is widely viewed on the left as, if not outright justified, because Jews mostly have some kind of affinity for Israel, but also just that there's sort of, as long as whatever violence is happening falls short of what Israel is inflicting on Palestinians, in a sense, what are you complaining about? And I'm thinking specifically of a Blue Sky mutual of mine, not somebody I know personally, just, social media, a journalist who's on the left, and I don't believe is Jewish, who posted something about how terrible the attack in Boulder was and followed it up with another post that was kind of but also let's not forget Gaza. And I sat with this for a while because I thought, it is horrible what's happening in Gaza. Why does it have to be affixed to this? There was something about but also let's not, it just seemed like you couldn't just say one thing was bad and that another thing was bad, but you had to somehow connect them. And I've been bugged by this and I've been thinking about it. And I guess I'm just wondering, how should Jews, American Jews, Canadian Jews, Jews anywhere, how should Jews approach, let's let Israeli Jews be for the time being, North American Jews. How should North American Jews approach this moment?
I think it's important to separate a few things. One is that there's a difference between condemnation and explanation, right? I think everyone, I think many of us would and should agree that all violence is bad, particularly violence against civilians in any context, right? And that's worth condemning. Um, and then there's the explanation part. And as an academic, and a historian in particular, I really do try to see a context for everything. And I think what's become clear is that, in a certain sense, the Intifada has been globalized, right? That what happens in Israel and Palestine and Gaza and the West Bank is connected to what happens to world Jewry now, right? Whether it's right to associate Jews, any Jews, with the state of Israel, whether that's fair or not, we're seeing it happen, right? I mean, that
Well, I think we already were seeing it happen,
Yeah.
but it's newly in the United States. That's
Yes.
because, I mean, because of having studied France, like, and having been in France, like sitting on the commuter train under the like anti-Jewish graffiti, like, yeah, I mean, I think it's new in the States. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. And certainly the ferocity of it, and now the tendency towards violence does feel new. I mean, the fact that we had two of these incidences so close together just recently, um, that kind of urges us to say, okay, what's going on here? Right. But I think it's also important to try to, again, put into context, try to explain as much as possible. Well, I think it's we have to condemn this violence that's happening to Jews or Jewish adjacent people in some
Yes, that
cases,
is another. Yeah.
in the United
Yes.
States,
Yes.
and it may very well happen in Canada too.
Well,
And
there has been
yeah, of
anti-Jewish violence in
course.
Canada, but
Yeah,
yes,
there's been
yes,
yeah,
yes.
and the United States, as you and I agree on this, has a gun problem, which Canada does not have the same problem. But as we know, you can find ways to be violent without guns, and so this is a huge, huge problem, right? It's just an enormous problem because, and again, I'll put on the academic hat. I don't know what's in anyone else's heart, and so I don't know exactly what motivates people when they do these sorts of things, and everyone will have their personal motivations and also their political motivations to do these sorts of things. But I think that even if, there's debates like, is this anti-Semitism? Is it anti-Zionism? And I don't know that the intentions and motivations of the people committing this violence matters as much as we're in an interconnected system where things that happen in the Middle East are going to lead to people behaving not just in Europe anymore, also, but in North America, violently.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
what I keep returning to on this, what just to pick up on what you were saying about that whether it's fair or not that it gets blamed on Jews. I mean, and Jews specifically outside of Israel. And I'm just thinking about again, like there are a lot of themes that keep kind of coming up on this podcast, but that most American Jews are Democrats. Most
Mhm.
American Jews did not and do not support what Trump is doing generally or on behalf of Jews, supposedly. And yet, who gets attacked? You know what I mean? It's not the people it's not the entities saying, let's deport students for supporting Palestine. It's Jews who are not, so like that to me is where anti-Semitism enters into it, when you can just see so clearly that there are people who would be the ones you'd be angry at if this were about Palestine solely. Whereas if it's, so, and especially when you think, I mean, especially this thing with the Boulder attack, particularly because of it being about the hostages and not, rah Israel, but
and not official representatives.
And not official. Exactly. Not that the DC, not that I think that's okay either, obviously, but I'm saying that just struck me as like, okay, this is pretty clear cut.
I agree with that, but I guess the point I was trying to make before is that I want to separate that from knowing what the motives of the actual
sure, I agree.
Right?
I don't think anybody can know what's in another person's head. Yeah.
And so, but I'm saying, like, we were both at NYU together some time ago, and I don't know if you ever had the chance to take a class with David Engel, who teaches.
Yes,
you did?
I did.
Okay.
We had like some kind of research or some sort of class, one-on-one class. Yes.
Wonderful. So anyway, David Engel recently retired, historian of European Jewry at NYU.
Really brilliant guy,
especially Eastern European Jewry, and he knows a million languages. And one of the things he famously wrote an article about and does in his teaching, he does not use the word anti-Semitism. And he has a chair had the chair in Holocaust studies. And for him, he would say that the word for scholars is often a crutch, and it doesn't explain much, right? It doesn't. Why did this happen? Because of anti-Semitism? No. Well, that's we have to put it into a larger context. It doesn't really help us to think just like to say anti-Semitic intent is the reason that X happened. I mean, there's a whole, and I'm sure the whole structuralist or functionalist versus intentionalist debate about the Holocaust is part of this conversation. And I think it's very helpful to use that idea, that framework that David Engel uses.
So speaking, sorry, go on. Sorry.
Oh, just to take a step back and say that regardless of what the intentions in the person's head, whether it was, and I use the word anti-Semitism in my own work, but I do try to, like I was saying, that you have now a situation where Jews will be associated with the state of Israel, whether they want to or not, and that is going to lead some people to commit violence against them. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so frustrating. I feel like Jews are also associated. I mean, forget like even anything so far afield. Jews are associated with the actions of the Trump administration, despite not having voted for Trump by and large. So that just seems, if that's intractable, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, but we're also seeing, the evangelical Christian wing of Zionism has for a long time taken a front seat ahead of American Jewry, and these are often the most sort of right wing.
And but that's not who gets attacked.
But that's not who get attacked, right?
David Weinfeld, thank you so much for coming on The Jewish Angle.
Thank you, Phoebe. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Jewish Angle, a podcast from the Canadian Jewish News. This has been Phoebe Maltz Bovy, opinion editor of the CJN and a contributing editor of Scribe Quarterly, the CJN's print magazine. The show is produced and edited by Michael Fraiman. Our music is by Frank Freeman. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to The Jewish Angle wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.
On the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz comes an unprecedented exhibition about one of history's darkest moments. Auschwitz, Not Long Ago, Not Far Away, features more than 500 original objects, first-hand accounts, and survivor testimonies that tell the powerful story of the Auschwitz concentration camp, its history and legacy, and the underlying conditions that allowed the Holocaust to happen. On now exclusively at ROM. Tickets at rom.ca.